Morning, Howard.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning, chaps.
So, how's your coffee here?
The coffee here, as you know, is above average, middle to average. No, it's excellent. I'm very pleased with our coffee here.
Right, so first of all, I want to know, how did you first get involved within the media industry and the charity sector?
Yeah, okay. Some of it is completely by chance, to be perfectly honest, or by kind of life sets up a little meandering path and you get there. So I studied professional media at Trinity and All Saints in Leeds, part of Leeds University. Always had a passion working with young people, kind of helping them kind of reach their full potential. And as part of a work placement, I kind of was interested in working in a community and trying to make a film that the young people would then take to counsellors and change their community with. Did that, and then from there developed a project in this community we're in today. And because my interests are in arts and media, so particularly radio, using film, using video, all that sort of stuff, it's always been part and part. I don't think you can do creative youth work or community work without using, art, and particularly using media. And nowadays, with all the little cameras, all that sort of stuff, it's so accessible. Everyone can get stuck in and create genius and change the community we live in.
So obviously you've heard about the government cuts.
Yes.
So what's your initial opinion about them hitting the charity sector?
Well, it's quite complicated, all of this, and there's all sorts of opinions. I mean, it's having direct. It affects this project directly, but also it's a slightly kind of confusing and complicated picture. One of so you'll have heard of like Cameron's idea of the big society, where the whole idea is rather than having kind of the voluntary sector or community, charity projects delivering work, everyone gets stuck in. Well, it's a really good idea, but kind of projects like this, we've been doing it for years, and the thing is, you can't do it without any money. Yeah, so it's like this quite clever idea to say, come on, everyone gets stuck in, but at the same time, there are 25% cuts, particularly within the kind of community sector, that came from central government, and what that's meant is a lot of the small pots of money that little projects like this. I'm the only full-time worker. We have 50 local volunteers, that sort of thing. The pots of money that £5,000 here, a few £1,000s here, that we can take, and then with 50 people create a big festival or something like that. Well, they're going. So it kind of is really affecting and stopping some of the way that we're delivering our work.
So you've talked about what you do here. So have the cuts directly affected the Farsley Youth Development Project? Yes,
as I was just saying. So here's the thing: for various reasons, we're actually closing down soon. Some of the work that we're doing is changing. You're supposed to start weeping and get your violins out there, but and partly that's to do with cuts, but it's also to do with. See, the reason it's slightly more complicated is also quite a lot of the money. So local people used to give us lots of money to keep going. So kind of £5 a month, £10 a month, whatever, really supportive. Well, actually, because of the cuts in their lives, so money is more tight, a lot of charity giving is going. So it's not just big chunks of money from the government, but actually people's loose change that they would go, yeah, we really want to support this project. That's going. Okay, so that's affected us. We're not necessarily closing down because of that, but it becomes really difficult to chase funding all the time, and that's been what's been happening. For example, our radio project, initially we were able to raise £27,000 to get that going. At the moment, it's sitting there with no wonga at all.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily need it, because it's all about volunteers and things like that, but a little pot of money here and there used to be quite easy to get hold of to keep it going. It's doing good work in this community, I believe. Guys like you guys are getting stuck in it, but it becomes harder and harder to keep it going, so it has to stop for a bit. We have to look at new ways of funding it and then carry on.
So obviously we know about Cameron's grand scheme and about everyone chipping in and stuff, but do you think that they really had a right to cut the funding?
This is a difficult one. So, my politics is such that I am to the left rather than to the right. So I actually believe in quite a strong state that looks not a manipulative and kind of dangerous state, but one that allows folk to kind of be supportive when they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And the one thing that upsets me quite a bit is that a lot of that is going. So some of the stuff really cuts. and I'll answer questions, but some of the local libraries and things like that are beginning to close down, and places like that and the Shores Arts Centres are really good places because people from all different backgrounds, those who are in need, those aren't necessarily so much in need, can come together and kind of really support their community in that, and that really makes a difference. And that's the sort of stuff that I really struggle that they're cutting. And sometimes you have to ask the question, and they are easy targets, but why are we so supportive of a free market that doesn't have any restrictions to allowing business to do its thing, if at times that business isn't kind of looking at the communities that they're based in, you know? So if all the money is going off to various other places and all that sort of stuff, or into big people's pockets, who's kind of looking after the little people?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Bit rambling, but you know, it's a difficult
one. That's what we want.
Yeah.
Right, Zach, do you want to say the rest of them? I've said my fair share.
So, obviously we've spoken about all of the main points, but do you feel like the government is now seeing charity more of a burden and it's less important to the economy, really?
My opinion is that they're slightly more cynical than that. So what I think they've done, and very clever, is if you have a concept like the big society, we're in this together and all that sort of stuff, well then you could cut the heck out of everything and then still expect everyone else to pick it up and solve the situation. Okay. So, well done everyone, let's all go out and put some bunting up and have lots of, you know, tea and cake in big parades and all this sort of stuff. But that's fine, but actually, in order to organise things like that, you need people a bit like me or other people that have got time to kind of capacity build and excite other people and get them to do it. It's totally unfair to take all the money and then go, it's all right, you'll sort it out. So I think they're being more cynical. I think on one side they're going, we're lovely, lovely, look, big society, well done everyone, and at the same time, you know, arguably they're smashing up things like the NHS, they're doing all that sort of stuff. That's a fairly political point, but I think at the moment it's okay to be fairly political. I struggle immensely with what they're doing.
Yeah. If the recession subsides, do you feel like the funding will return?
It depends. It depends who's in power, because actually cutting is ideological as much as it is pragmatic. So at the moment they're doing it because there's this word. Do you remember? Anyone remembered it? So how old are you guys now?
17.
17, right? Even 4 years ago, the phrase deficit or whatever was never used. We never used it to cutting the deficit. They kind of created this thing where, you know, let's cut the deficit. It's something we've all got to pull together to do. Now don't get me wrong, you've got to sort your accounts out. You can't live with this big bubble where everyone was kind of, they were mortgaging their houses to the hill, everyone was living in debt and all that. That was always going to crash, you know, all the banking sector, that was always going to happen. However, to keep cutting funds is actually about making the state smaller and is actually an ideological kind of decision. So if the Tories stay in, well then, the cuts will still stay there because that's what they do. They're a kind of a, you know, tax cuts and all that. So that's what they do. However, in some ways, that isn't necessarily always a bad thing because the counter argument is projects like this won't always exist if all they do is ask for funding all the time and actually aren't creative enough to create a sort of a social enterprise and stuff like that as well. So if we're in a system where, you know, capitalism, where you've got to create money and all that, a little project with a good ideology, with a good view that says we want to help young people, you know, achieve what they can, the best that they can be, well actually look at different models, not just as a charity, but can you be a social enterprise? Can you run a cafe, for example, and then the profits of the cafe help on the radio station and all that sort of stuff. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that the cuts there, but I don't think it will be the same as it was in the heady days of the Labour were brilliant, you know, 97, whatever people say about Tony Blair and all that. What they did do was they brought infrastructure and money into the grassroots. All right?
Yeah. As you work with a lot of young adults and the volunteers, do you think that they are being affected as well?
I think young people are incredibly resilient and incredibly creative and will cope with any situation that they're put in as long as they're kind of, as long as we invest in them. So, yes, they're affected in the same way as, I would just say kind of, it's logical that if you cut opportunities, then there aren't as many things for young people to do. It's an obvious statement. So, the programme, if you like, the options for them are getting limited. However, young people will be young people. I'm not sure it takes that much money to inspire young people and all that sort of stuff. Actually, it takes people who care and people who listen and actually engage in the proper way. So yes, of course, there's effects. There's specialist effects. So for example, things like drug support or kids that are in the prison system or whatever. There's loads of really skilled special charities that work with those guys that are losing funding and all that, and that will affect. So some of the guys on the margins. However, I'm a great believer that there will always be creative projects that come up and go, let's try and work this out together.
And this project has come a long way in the past few years. What do you see for the future?
Well, as I said, frankly, we're closing down. Forget it. I've had enough. No. Well, yes, but no. The future is, FYDP won't exist in the same way. However, the principle, which is creating spaces where the wider community, young people, can work out how they want their community to be, which I think is kind of, if everyone gets a chance to talk about kind of where they live and their hopes for that place, then surely that's got to be a good thing and we'll see change.
Absolutely.
So things like the radio, the cafe you're in now, the festival will exist, but maybe in a really kind of strange way, because FYDP is closing down, so the body that's been holding that, actually local people themselves will have to get stuck in. It's almost, as I said, the big society thing in Cameron. The difference being, what we're going to have to do is keep fighting for the funding to allow it to happen. Because these things don't happen by accident. They're really hard work, and so it's exciting. The potential is still there, and it always will be there, regardless of funding's going up, funding going down, or whatever. It's essentially about people going, let's get stuck in and make a change.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've actually gained all the information we need.
Is that right?
That's brilliant.
Thank you for your time, Howard.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, boys.
Thank you.